Hi, okay, so this is my final tweet. And so to sum up my experience in this class in one word, it's really tough. Um, but it'd probably have to be perspective because from like one, what I've learned from both of your classes, from interpersonal and from ethics, is that everyone has a different narrative and has a different perspective to bring to the table. And so you need to be aware of that. Like, yes, I have my own perspective on things, but it's constantly being shaped by other people's perspectives and what they've maybe gone through, why they feel the way that they do. And so I think that we did a really great job of exploring that this semester in ethics. Especially what stood out to me was the activity that we did one day in class where you gave some of us titles to portray, but everyone else was to take a step forward for something that they agreed with or resonated with, and it was just really eye opening and interesting to see um, what people took a step forward as when it was their own identity that they were portraying, but then for things like what I had to step forward for, or what I thought my identity would step forward for when I was portraying an atheist. So that was just really interesting because it gives you a quick little insight onto what these people have as a perspective, and that kind of gives you a deeper look into maybe their ethical perspectives, what they think is going right, what they think is not, and why they feel that way. And it was just very interesting from the different um, guest speakers that we had, like former governor, as well as the videos that we watched. And so, perspective, I think, is the best because when you are thinking ethically, you need to also have others' perspectives in mind and how what you deem ethical or what society deems ethical also lines up with some maybe very present people that it will affect, if that makes sense. And so I'm probably like what I'm going to talk about in this video is probably a, like you said, uh, kind of summary of my leadership manifesto or ethical manifesto. Yeah, leadership ethical manifesto, all of that. The concept map. So this kind of counts as my quote, but also just what my ethics is really defined by, which I hit on in that concept map. And this this is the quote. It comes from 1 Corinthians 13:4, which says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails." So that is, like I said in my manifesto, one of my favorite verses of all time. It is something that I just feel I personally try and live by all the time, and I think it's a great way to define my personal ethics and my morals and everything about me that I try to convey and just show when I interact with others and how I lead and how I am as a person. Um, because this definition of love, rather than probably your social definition and things that people say all the time, like, oh, I love that place, oh, I love you, even though you just met 5 minutes ago, that kind of stuff. I just think it really digs deep into everything that is moral and typically accepted as moral across the board. Like being patient, you need to be patient with others and listen to why they feel the way that they do, really understand a situation. I think kindness is one of the biggest things that you can do as a leader, and being ethical because you're really taking into consideration everyone and how to best do things. Um, and not being proud. I feel like if you're prideful all the time, that's going to get in the way of being an ethical leader and being an ethical person, because you're letting your pride and other sense of value and worth get in the way of potentially making the right ethical decision. Not being rude, that's kind of a straightforward one. I feel like when you're ethical, you're not purposely being rude. I mean, it's a little bit impossible to not offend someone in some way, because not everyone's going to agree. But I think having that intention to not be rude and be kind instead is really important. Um, being not self-seeking. I think that's also huge. Like, probably one of the biggest ones in being ethical, because when you're a leader, you're looking out for others and for whatever organization or something that you are leading, and not for yourself. When you make ethical decisions, it's not because you're, I have a text here. It's not because you're going to make those for yourself. You're making it for the people around you and the other people that's going to impact, and not just you. And when it's not easily angered, I think, like, when a leader is a hothead all the time and not able to be calm and collected and patient, that doesn't look well, doesn't look good. And keeping no record of wrongs, I agree with that to a point. In terms of ethical leadership, you need to be aware if there have been wrongdoings before and just kind of assess those as you go. But not delighting in evil, that's kind of huge. You don't want to, I think delighting in evil is the opposite of being ethical. And I just think also being ethical when it says that it always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres, I think that's huge, because trusting is so important. We talked about that a lot in class, and I think that trusting in your followers, trusting in the organization, and having those people trust in you speaks volumes about your ethics and your leadership. I think it's always good to be hopeful as well, especially in today's society where there's so much darkness, and when there's so much devastation and pain and fear and just a lot of heartbreak in the world. I think it's important to be hopeful and be joyful. And lastly, to always persevere. So I know that was a lot, and that I'm 3 minutes over my time limit, but I'm trying to use my creative ability, and that is how I feel about ethics and kind of what sums up my ethical leadership. And I've really enjoyed the class. I thought it was very eye-opening. Like I said at the beginning, gave me a lot of perspective and awareness to keep others' perspectives in mind and seek their perspectives, especially if I'm struggling with a decision or anything else, and make sure that I'm always ethical. And so hopefully try and live by 1 Corinthians 13:4 as my ethical manifesto, and just who I am as at the core of my person. So I'm sorry I'm about to go 4 minutes over, but thank you so much for everything, always.